Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim, he's Justin. Day 6 of the 30 clubs and 30 recaps is your town, your team, your Chicago Cubs coming off a 71-91 season last year. They fired Mike Quaddy in the offseason, brought in Dale Swaim, who's been in the Brewers organization, and with the Cubs, he even took over for the Brewers for 1 year after Ned Yost was fired, helped get them to the playoffs. Justin, what did they do in the offseason to take steps to improve their personnel?
Well, they did some minor adjustments to both ends. They did try and enhance that bullpen and also the pitching rotation. But they got Paul Mulholland coming over from the Pittsburgh Pirates. They signed Rodrigo Lopez. They re-signed him this offseason. You got Manuel Corpus. They traded Chris Volstead. They got rid of Carlos Zambrano to the Miami Marlins for Chris Volstead. I think they got David DeJesus, and it's just there's some minor adjustments on both ends, but this looks like they are in a rebuilding process. Well, they're trying to get a winning team going together, and with David DeJesus, with that, he has some veteran experience, so he's going to bring some nice. Maybe he's going to be a solid, maybe number 5 or maybe number 4 hitter.
Alright, and they also designated Blake DeWitt for assignment the other week after claiming Adrian Cardenas off waivers from the Oakland A's. So we'll get to talking about him a little bit more later in this video. Having trouble talking today. Let's start going through the Cubs lineup. At catcher, you have Giovanni Soto, who last year hit .228 with 17 home runs and 54 RBIs. And really, since his rookie season, where he hit .285, hit 23 home runs and 86 RBIs, the average has not quite been there as much. And the production was still solid in like 2010, but the problem has just been he has not been able to stay healthy over the course of his career, and that's really knocked him down in most people's minds.
Yeah, Giovanni Soto, I have this feeling that he's going to be a great catcher this year. I think he plays great defensive baseball, and looking at last year, he had a pretty decent season last year, even though he played a tremendous amount of games, 125. I think he's going to be a solid 25 home run hitter this year. He had .228 average, and I can see that happening this year.
Backing him up then, we have Steve Clevenger, and last season in 2 games he had .250, and really that means nothing because it means he did not get enough at-bats that it really matters what his average was. So we're going to have to see what happens with them. At first base, they lost Carlos Pena via free agency. He went back to the Tampa Bay Rays. They will put in Brian LaHair over at first base. He hit in 20 games last year, .288 with 2 home runs and 6 RBIs. He's 29 years old, so really I would not have a ton to expect from him, or he would have been in the major leagues already. In 2008, he also had a stint in the major leagues in 45 games where he hit 3 home runs and 10 RBIs. So I would not expect a ton out of LaHair this season. Really, it's just kind of a point where the Cubs did not have anyone else to put there, so he is the guy. Anthony Rizzo will also be over there. He spent last season with the Padres. He is very young. They acquired him this offseason, I believe. In 49 games with the Padres last year, he hit 141 with 1 home run and 9 RBIs. Maybe moving to a smaller park will help him out this season, and he can improve on what he basically didn't do last year. Okay, go ahead.
Well, okay, they missed out on both Pujols and Prince Fielder, and they have to bring in Brian LaHair. But when you're looking at this, I would go with Anthony Rizzo because he has more major league experience than Brian LaHair. And Anthony Rizzo looks like he's on the right path to becoming a great player. I mean, this guy looks like he could be a solid, maybe 20 home run type of hitter. Like last season wasn't the greatest. I'm sorry, my phone just went off right there. But he looks pretty solid. I think just give him a shot, but you also got to see what Brian LaHair has.
The thing about giving Rizzo a shot is Rizzo's 23, LaHair's 29. What do you really, when the Cubs are not anywhere near contending in the next year or two, what are you getting out of a 29-year-old guy? Maybe a 23-year-old guy can be a piece that you use in the future, whether he ends up being a starter or just a bench bat when you can bring in a more veteran first baseman. But I think playing LaHare there is essentially pointless because you're not going to get better production than Rizzo in all likelihood, and he's older, so it doesn't make a ton of sense to me. At second base, Darwin Barney will be starting in 143 games. Last season, he had 276 with 2 home runs and 43 RBIs, and then the season before, he had 241 in 30 games, 0 home runs, and 2 RBIs. He's not going to blow you away at second base, to say the least. He did do a decent job in the base stealing category last year. He stole 9 out of 11 bases, but I would rank him as a pretty average second baseman.
Yeah, he hits for average 276 last year. He had a very hot start to the season last year, and I really do expect the same thing from last year going into this year. He's really proved himself that he wants to be the everyday shortstop, second baseman for this team, and I agree with this. I think this is a great young talented player that they have in their organization, and I can see this guy being the guy for the next few years.
I wouldn't say he's great, but backing him up, I think is...
Well, he's good, you know what I mean.
Backing him up, there's a guy who I think has always had the potential to be great, Adrian Cardenas. At one point, he was the top prospect, or one of the top 5 prospects in the Phillies organization, was traded away for Joe Blanton, and really just had trouble flourishing with the A's in their minor league system. And their minor league system is probably a mess because they trade away all their talent at the major league level to get minor league players. So you have different guys coming in all the time. It's probably real tough to get any team continuity. So we'll see what he can come over and do with the Cubs. He's a young guy, still only 25 years old, and I think that he could still be a pretty solid player in the MLB in a few seasons. But we're going to have to see what he does. He has never made an appearance in the major leagues yet. So I assume at age 25 that's kind of why they moved on from him in the A's organization. But he was ranked as a top 5 prospect at one point, so there's certainly some potential there. And Jeff Baker is also on the team, on the roster. He has had some decent seasons with the Cubs over the past few years. He's not going to do anything special for you, though. At shortstop, you have Starlin Castro, a guy who was an all-star starter last year, hit 307 with 10 home runs and 66 RBIs, and he does look like that he could potentially be one of the guys long-term for this team.
Yeah, Starlin Castro, an average hitter. This guy is dangerous on the base path, and I'm pretty sure that once his contract is up, this Cubs team is going to lock him up for a longer extension. I feel that this guy could be, once like Soriano is gone, I heard there's a lot of trade rumors going around Soriano that he's going to be gone. He's been there for a while, and I'm thinking that once those guys are gone, Starlin Castro is going to be the face of this franchise.
Yeah, I think he kind of is. He's only 21 years old, or he will be prior to the season beginning. So there is a bright, bright future for Starlin Castro, and he already last season was in the All-Star game. And he's going to be that type of guy that is there long-term for this team. And hopefully for him, he can see this team ultimately turn around in his time there. At third base, you have Ian Stewart, who was acquired from the Colorado Rockies in the offseason. A few years ago, in 2009, he looked like he had a bright future because even though he only had 228 that season, he gave you 25 home runs and 70 RBIs in 147 games, and it looked like he was going to be able to, if he got that average up, become a really solid third baseman. But then the numbers dipped. In 2010, he had 256 with 18 home runs and 61 RBIs, and then last year in 48 games he got injured. He just had really a down season last year. He had 0 home runs and 6 RBIs. So we're gonna have to see what they can get out of Ian Stewart. I think that he's going to be a guy who's going to hit around 240. He's not going to give you a great average, but the power moving in. I mean, it's not like most guys when you move to the Cubs, the power is going to go up because you're going into Wrigley Field where the wind blows out. But Coors Field is also a really good hitter's park. So I would expect about 20 to 25 home runs from Ian Stewart this year, and I think that the Cubs will take that. He's obviously replacing Aramis Ramirez, who went to the Milwaukee Brewers this offseason.
He's filling in a big role for Aramis Ramirez, and with the moves that these Cubs did they just hurt their team in the infield. I mean, Ian Stewart, and you also got Brad LaHare. They're replacing Carlos Pena, and they're replacing the two power bats off this team last year. And
the reason they left, though, ultimately, is because this team's not ready to contend. So they're trying to go with some younger guys. I don't think anyone feels like Brad LaHair is ever going to be anything in the major leagues, but Ian Stewart could be.
Oh, Ian Stewart, yeah, he has that. He's been in the majors for quite a while now, but I wouldn't see him as a 25 home run hitter this year. I mean, he's gotten close. He had 25 home runs back in, I think it was 2009 with Colorado. But I think when you look at this season, me thinking about Ian Stewart, I can really see him hitting somewhere around maybe 14 to 15 home runs. We just have to see. His power has just gone down last season. It's just nothing was really connecting the dots in the 48 games with Colorado.
In right field, then, you have David DeJesus, and if we didn't mention this at the beginning of the video, one of the also huge things that went on the offseason, Jed Hoyer became the GM. Obviously, I believe he was with the Padres before, and then Theo Epstein became the president, where he essentially, I think, is the GM, and a lot of people are excited about that. But in right field, another one of the guys they signed this offseason was David DeJesus, who spent, since 2003 to 2010, his entire career with the Kansas City Royals, and then he signed an off-season deal with the A's last year and really disappointed because he's hit over 300 a few times in his career. Mostly he's been good for about a 290 to 95 average, give you 10 home runs. He's had a nice career, and then last year with the A's in 131 games, he hit 240 with 10 home runs and 46 RBIs. So he's a low-risk, high-reward guy, and I like the pickup for the A's. I think he'll give them a few good seasons there.
Absolutely. I mean, David DeJesus, a very average type of hitter, a 284 career batting average. This guy has not had a year in his MLB career where he hit over 20 home runs. Like the most he ever had in one season was 13. That was back in his Kansas City Royals days in 2009, I'm pretty sure. I think this is the year where he can hit over 20 home runs. I think he's going to hit 21 this year, and that's where I'm going to put it at. This guy is an average hitter, and I just think he's going to bring home a lot of runs. He had, 46 last year with Oakland, and I think he's going to get up to at least 50 or 60 is where I'll put that at. I do have a lot of expectations. Me being a DeJesus fan, I have a lot of expectations going for him. He's going to be, along with Marlon Byrd and Soriano, being those guys to watch out for. This outfield is stacked.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions in the outfield, especially health-wise.
The very average hitting outfield.
You mean they hit for average?
Yeah, I mean, Marlon Byrd hits for average. You also got Soriano. It depends if Soriano's going to be here or not. There's just so many questions surrounding that guy. We'll just have to see.
And then backing up DeJesus, and I kind of agree the power will go up for DeJesus moving into Wrigley Field from Oakland, which is not exactly, I mean...
Grand Canyon of the stadium.
I don't know if it's that. I'll give that award to Citi Field, but it's not a hitter's ballpark, and really, it's not a nice ballpark, and to be quite honest, there would be no reason right now why anyone would want to go to the A's, if I'm being quite honest with you. But I'm digressing. And backing him up, then, you have Reed Johnson, who will also back up Soriano in left field. Reed Johnson's had a nice career with the Blue Jays and the Cubs, and even a stint with the Dodgers. He hit 309 last year in 111 games, 5 home runs, and 28 RBIs. He hit 12 home runs in 2006. He's a fourth outfielder. Every team needs it, and the Cubs have a very solid fourth outfielder with Reed Johnson. In center field, David DeJesus will also serve as the backup here, and Reed Johnson could also get some looks. But Marlon Byrd will be the backup, or will be the starter this year. After coming over from Texas in 2009, Byrd had a solid season in 2010, 293 with 12 home runs. And last season, in only 119 games, a lot of that had to do with him getting hit in the face. I think it was against the Red Sox in interleague play. He had
that was brutal.
Yeah, that was one of the worst hits I've ever seen. And then he had 276 with 9 home runs and 35 RBIs last year. Did work out quite a few walks for the amount of games that he played. I think Marlon Byrd, he had a slow start to his career with the Phillies and the Nationals, but ultimately ended up thriving with the Texas Rangers, and I think that he is one of the more underrated players, and I would not be surprised at all to see him representing the Cubs in the All-Star game I think that he's going to be good for about a 280 to 85 average and 12 to 15 home runs.
I have to agree with you, Tim. This guy is an average hitter his whole MLB career. I mean, he has had one season where he hit over 20 home runs, and I do expect him to have this is a good year for him. He said he's healthy. He's looking pretty good. He said he's just ready to come back, play baseball. And I have, looking at his 9 home runs last year, 35 home runs, 276 average. Like I said, this is an average outfield hitting wise. And when you look at Marlon Byrd, I have a pretty solid season for him. 15 home runs is where I'll put him at this year.
In left field, then, you have the controversial figure, Alfonso Soriano. Obviously, earlier in his career with the Yankees, he was a beast, got traded to the Rangers in the A-Rod trade, was a beast there, went to the Nationals for a year, had a career year in RFK Stadium, which was a big stadium. He had almost 50 home runs, joined the 40-40 club that year, and since coming to the Cubs, I mean, he hasn't been terrible, but he has certainly not lived up to being a guy. And he's 5 years through an 8-year contract that pays him $138 million. He has not been that guy, and the Cubs should have seen that coming. He's one of the worst fielding left fielders I've ever seen. The guy does a crow hop before a catch when there's no one on base, and half the time he ends up dropping the ball. And the average throughout the last 3 seasons, he's gone from being, at the worst, a 280 hitter to being like a 240 and 250 hitter. That's gone down. The power numbers are slowly starting to go down. And he's not stealing money because he's still giving them production, but he's certainly not. He is one of the reasons why the Cubs are where they are, because they've gotten into a lot of bad contracts like this.
Yeah, that's why they're trying to ship him out of Chicago. Now, there are a few teams that really come to my mind that could possibly use an outfielder, but Tim, I haven't asked you this question. What teams do you think would suit Alfonso Soriano right now?
Well, I think the Yankees could potentially be a fit again if we're hearing they're going to sign either Raul Ibanez and or Eric Chavez, but if one of those type of deals doesn't work out and the Yankees decide they want a right-handed bat to play DH, I mean, obviously they could go with Andrew Jones, but I think that could be a fit. There's a lot of fits, potentially. The Tigers, I think, could maybe be a fit. It's going to be tough, though. The Cubs are going to have to take on still a lot of the money that this guy's owed, so I wouldn't expect to see them get really anything in return. And it's more about just getting him off the team, because it's almost become, whether he is a loser by the definition, he's become sort of a losing culture because he's been there, and since he's been there, they've basically either been associated with having a great regular season and choking in the playoffs early in his time there, and over the past few seasons, the Cubs have just been a bad team.
Yeah, man, I mean, I just think that this team, they're getting younger. I agree with that. Theo Epstein coming in here, and he did not make the correct moves. I mean, getting rid of the third baseman Ramos Ramirez, that's a pretty shitty move on their part.
Yeah, but I mean, he's like 33. What do you really, by locking him up? It's almost like wasting money. And I don't mean to say it like that, but the production you're going to get is still great. But the Cubs aren't going anywhere over the next few years. He was not coming back. I mean, he had the chance to get a $16 million option for next year. He declined it and ultimately ended up getting like 13 on the open market. I think it was like a 3-year, $37 million deal he got with the Cubs. I think he's just trying to clear out and build a new team, and it's not going to happen overnight, that's certain. But I think that Theo Epstein is trying to work towards building his own team and not sticking with a lot of the guys here that have held this team back from being successful.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look into going into not this year but the year after this year, I can see maybe the Cubs pursuing some pretty middle names. They're going to be like they're going to be not the Cardinals, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're going to try to sign all these minor name type of players and try to rebuild in the rebuilding process. And I do agree with if Theo Epstein does go that route.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect route to take because he had the type of money they had in the Cubs, but ultimately what made he had the type of money in Boston when he was their GM that he's going to be getting with the Cubs. A little bit less, but close to it. He still is in a huge market team. But what he did with the Red Sox is he even quit the GM spot there at one point and ultimately ended up coming back. But he said, I'm going to do it my way. We're not going to go out. We're not going to get all our great players through free agency. We're going to get creative. And his time there, he did get guys like Kurt Schilling and Manny Ramirez via free agency. But he made some creative trades to get guys like Josh Beckett and Mike Lowell. That was a blockbuster trade. He got David Ortiz, I think, off waivers. Or it was a really small signing because David Ortiz wasn't a huge name then, and I think we know why at this point, but it was still a nice pickup. And for the most part, he brought a lot of his guys up to the farm system. Guys like Dustin Pedroia, John Lester. John Lester wasn't supposed to be really anything when he came up, and he's turned into one of the top 10 pitchers in baseball. Guys like Clay Buchholz, who we heard that they were going to normally probably would have traded him for Johan Santana when he was available, and ultimately that probably would not have worked out. And he's like guys like he's brought in guys like Daniel Bard, so I think he wants to build through the through the farm system at this point, and that's probably the best route that we see work for most teams. It's get your core through your farm system and then filter in players. If you look at teams like the Yankees, that's what they did that made some of those 90s teams so successful, is they had Jeter, Posada, guys like that through the farm system, and then they brought in guys like Roger Clemens and so on. You get the point.
Yeah, they do have a nice farm system, and I can really see them using some of their top prospects this season, probably most likely as July or maybe August call-ups. I'm pretty sure with what they have right now,
their farm system's all right, but that's kind of been one of the problems is the previous people there. Drawing a blank on the GM's name right now, but he kind of had trouble building through the farm system, wanted to do it all through free agency, guys like Ted Lilly and all that, and it didn't work out. So Theo Epstein has some good guys in like single A right now, but the double A and triple A for the Cubs is really not too strong, so they're going to have to continue to work to rebuild that, and hopefully they can find some guys on this roster to trade. Unfortunately, the guys on this, I don't see too many guys on this team that are going to get you a goal.
I just don't hope that they don't rush these prospects and hope to be like. I know there's some guys down there in the single A, double A, and triple A levels that these guys could be something in the future. But I just don't want them rushing, just having them used as a waste of talent.
Yeah, and that's what you see with a lot of these teams that are desperate to get people back in the stands. Luckily, for the most part, people are going to come to Cubs games no matter what, and that might be their downfall because ownership's not going to change a ton if you keep going to the games, but it is what it is. We next go to the starting rotation. This is going to be a long-ass video. We go to the we've been on the Chicago Cubs. We go to Ryan Dempster, the ace of this rotation. I believe he's the longest tenured Cub. He began as a closer and then turned himself into an elite starter. And over the past few seasons, every year, since going 17-6 with a 2.96 ERA, his ERA has gone up every year. In 2009, it was 3.65, 2010, 3.85, and last year, 4.80. If he can get his ERA down and produce some wins for this team, he gives you 200 innings every season, which is really impressive out of a starter. It's one of the things you look for. Then he could be a piece that they could potentially trade at the deadline. I don't see the Cubs in contention, so that would be the type of guy you could see traded.
I see Ryan Dempster be on this team till the end of the season. I don't think he's going to resign next year. I think he's going to be like, you know what, I've been in Chicago since 2004, and I haven't really gotten that shot in the playoffs yet. I want to go to a contender, and there could be a couple of teams that could use him. Maybe like the Miami Marlins could be an interest, because I heard maybe the Marlins were interested in him during after the World Series and building it up towards this current season, but I really think that they're going to give Dempster one full season left, and then Dempster's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to pack my bags and head out the door and hope somebody else can give me a shot. So I think he signed a 1-year extension, I think it was. I'm pretty sure. But I think it's just one more year, and if the Cubs do not improve, he's going to be out the door.
I'm not exactly sure what his I thought he signed like a 3 or 4 year deal like after that really good season 2008, so he either has 1 year, this is either the last year of his deal or next year, so one of the two, but yeah, like you said, he'll either get traded or walk at the end of the season.
But if he's having a pretty terrible season, I can see the Cubs shipping him out early.
Well, the problem is if he's having a pretty terrible season, I don't think anyone's going to want to take on the type of money he's making. And the Marlins thing is interesting because he spent like the first 4 seasons of his career with the Marlins. At the number 2 position or spot in the rotation, you have Matt Garza, who went 10-10 last year with a 3.32 ERA. This guy, he's been kind of overrated throughout his career because with the Rays he was a solid pitcher, but people made it out to be like this guy was an elite ace in the MLB. And I know that the ERA is going to go up because you're pitching in such a good division, but 3.95 and 3.91 ERA in 2009 and 2010 really is not that good, and he threw over 200 innings. That being said, I think he is a solid number 2 for a National League team in the playoffs, and for or really any team in the National League. But the AL has become so strong that I think if you really want to make a run this season, you got teams like the Rangers, the Angels, the Rays, the Tigers, the Red Sox, the Yankees, and who knows who else. You're going to need to have 3 really good starters. And I think adding Matt Garza at the deadline could really help you out because he's a guy who will give you a lot of innings. He always stays healthy. And I think that the Cubs will get a lot from him as he is in the final year of his contract.
Now, this is a sleeping giant. I'm a huge Matt Garza fan. I do expect a lot out of him this year. I can have this guy as a solid 15-game winner. He did it back in 2010 in his final year in Tampa Bay, and I think he can repeat that 2010 season. I mean, he had a 3.91 ERA, which really brought him down, but he had a great season, near 200 strikeouts, and I have a lot of expectations for him going into this year. If Ryan Dempster is out, this is the next guy in line to be the ace in that pitching rotation, because I know Chris Volstad is not the question. Paul Mulholland is not the question. Randy Wells is not the question. And you also got, I think his name is Travis Wood, if I'm pretty sure that's what his name is.
Travis Wood.
Do not follow the Cubs at all as much. But I do watch them if I have a shot. But Matt Garza is another guy you're really going to watch out for. He's the next guy in line. This is a sleeping giant waiting to happen. This guy's going to have a beast year within the next 2 or 3 years. I promise you guys.
At the 3rd position in their rotation, then they have Travis Wood, who they acquired in the offseason for Sean Marshall, and excuse me. They acquired him in the offseason. I've seen some really strong moments out of him with the Reds. I think he almost threw a no-hitter a few years ago, but ultimately he's had a 4.84 ERA last year in 18 games, and in 17 games in 2010, he had a 3.51 ERA. In a lot of cases with the Reds, he was used as more of a spot starter than anything, but he will serve as the number 4 starter, or the number 3 starter for the Cubs, and they don't have a ton of rotation depth. The first 2 are really strong for the most part if they have a solid year this year, which they haven't always had, but the Travis Wood is kind of a drop-off at number 3.
I don't know much about Travis Wood, but I'm just gonna go with what you said. He doesn't really bring much to the plate. He did have time in Cincinnati, which really from what I pretty much know, he did have 106 innings last year with Cincinnati Reds. He was 6-6 with the 4.84. He is pretty much that. You know what? You can pitch on every time you're up there, but I don't really see this guy really having that good of a season. I'd probably say maybe a solid 10 wins, somewhere around there. Don't really know much about Travis Wood.
At the number 4 spot, you have Chris Volstad, and he doesn't bring much to the table either. In 29 games, I mean, he'll pitch for you. He'll give you some decent innings and start every start, but he really is not very good. After 2008, he had a 6-4 record with a 2.88 ERA. He had a 5 ERA pretty much every season since then in his career. So not impressive, and essentially they just got him to get Carlos Zambrano off their hands, and you have to trade someone away or you have to get a piece back. So Chris Volstad was that piece. He's only 26, so who am I to say he won't be anything good? But I just don't see it. At number 5, they have Paul Mulholland, who has had some decent seasons with the Pirates, and last year, although he's 6-14, he gave him a 3.66 ERA. If he can do that, then he will be a solid number 5 starter, one of the guys they brought in this offseason. He's not going to blow you away, but he's actually been a pretty decent pitcher with them. He threw over 200 innings in 2008. So we'll have to see what they can get out of him. Then we look over to the bullpen. Carlos Marmol will be the closer. And man, we've been doing this video for a long time. Carlos Marmol will be the closer. He's made a few he's made an All-Star appearance in 2008. And over the past few seasons, he has had trouble saving games. Last year, he blew 10 saves. And in 2010, he blew 5 saves. So ultimately, he gets a lot of opportunities, and he does save a decent amount of them. But he has blown far too many saves over the past few seasons.
Absolutely. Carlos Marmol, I mean, I'm all up for second chances, but I think this season, when you look at Carlos Marmol, I really see this guy going into spring training. He's like, you know what, time to control my pitches, try to get out of innings, just try to click it and just get out of there fast and just move on to the next day. Now, when you look at Jeff Samardzija, he's a setup guy. Do know a lot about him, actually. I think Jeff Samardzija is a solid backup type of guy. You don't really hear him a lot. He was 8-4. He did appear in 75 games, but I don't really hear him a lot. I think this is a guy who is a suitable closer, but once that Carlos Marmol starts blowing a lot of games. I mean, you said 10 games last year. Give Jeff Samardzija a shot, and let's just see what this guy's made of. He only has 1 save in his career, and let's just see what this Notre Dame athlete has. See what he's had. I mean, give him a shot at the closing position.
Yeah, I believe he even played football in college too.
Quarterback. Wow, I just kind of weird. I apologize, everybody, but yeah, just give him a good shot. I mean, let's just see what he's made of.
And then you have Kerry Wood also in that bullpen. So Kerry Wood essentially said he wanted to finish his career there. He spent all of his seasons except the 2009 season, which he spent with the Indians, and 2010, which he spent with the Indians and the Yankees. He spent the rest of his career with the Cubs, and it's been a rocky career. He started off as a phenom starter with Mark Pryor back in the day. Things went downhill, and ultimately over the past 3 or 4 seasons, he settled in as a pretty solid relief pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. So we're going to have to see what happens with the Cubs this season. Justin, what do you see with their record? And then we can do a little rapid fire if you want.
Yo, you know what? I think this team, they do have a lot of talent. This team always comes in with a nice talent. Soto, you do got the Jesus Bird. You got Ian Stewart, who I have some questions on. Matt Garza is that sleeping giant in this team. I have this team having a 74, maybe to 77 win season.
I see them at about 70 wins this season, maybe even lower, because I think that this is a rebuilding year, and I think that they will be the Miami Marlins of next offseason, because I think Theo Epstein is really going to try and turn this team around quickly. Anything else, Justin?
All right, let's do a little bit of rapid fire right now. All right, so in the first year, Tim, with Theo Epstein under management now, do you think that this Cubs will make the playoffs?
No.
If you don't think with this talented team, you think you'll make the playoffs?
No, I don't see it. I mean, this division's kind of wide open, but I don't see the Cubs taking it.
I know we said that before, but it's worth a shot, Leo. And if you just look at this team, it's all stud, kind of with young talent. Okay, Alfonso Soriano, is he out the door by the
Yeah, I think they'll get rid of him by the trade deadline, but unfortunately they're going to have to pick up a lot of his contract, so it's not going to change a ton.
Matt Garza, 15-game winner.
Yeah, I don't know if all 15 will be with the Cubs, but he'll win 15 games.
All right, wrap it up. Who is like? I want to hear your breakout star on this team.
My breakout star on this team, I actually like the guy that you had. Well, no, I look at Adrian Cardenas. He could potentially be that, but I'm going to go with Jeff Samardzija. I've seen a lot of good things out of him in the bullpen, and I think that he will have a tremendous season this year for the Cubs. So I'm Justin East Tim, #Deuces.